good chicken spaghetti.
Right.
With Rotel tomatoes because you want the kick.
Right. I mean, this was 10 years ago.
That's like Ole Miss and Mississippi State basketball right now. Really good chicken spaghetti.
No doubt.
Is like Kugel and Brakefield when they're hot.
Right.
I mean, when you walk into a local place in Mississippi or somewhere and you get really good chicken spaghetti, you're happy.
Absolutely.
Your taste buds are popping. When you're watching Riley Kugel drop 21 or Brakefield drop 21, you're happy.
If you combine the two,
I'll tie those in. Yeah, or if you're eating chicken spaghetti while Ole Miss or Mississippi State are winning in basketball, you're really happy.
And then it was $8. That included a dessert.
That's awesome.
Because you got a student discount for $1, so you got a free drink or a free dessert. Man, they rule. I'm telling you, I was there every single day. Hey, I probably ate there 3 times a week.
You know, it's funny because Dan Mullen was from the Northeast and then lived in the Midwest and then lived in the West at Utah and then lived in Florida, which is totally transient, not the South. When he got to Starkville, he fell in love with Cappies.
Did he really? How do you not?
The MSU football team ordered Cappies more than anything else.
That does not surprise me.
Yeah.
It was humming too.
Ask Chris Jones what his favorite spot was in Starkville. I mean, I could go on and on. Yeah. But Dan catered from Cappies. If he did it once, he did it 400 times. I mean, it's just really good Southern soul food.
So,
yeah.
That line used to be packed out the door. Lunchtime.
If you didn't get there by 11,
no, you were toast.
Yeah,
you were toast. You got to call it in and hope for the best when you got there.
Yeah. Golly, I love some good chicken spaghetti.
That's good. I don't know where I'd get it here.
Well, let's ask our listeners. I don't either. I don't think I've ever had chicken spaghetti at a restaurant. Well, I mean, I say ever. I don't.
Well, I mean,
you know me. I mean, I'm not going to Hammer Blue Plates.
Right.
But now this time of year, I'll go and you and I go and eat lunch once or twice a month, and I'll eat a big lunch because we're at one of our Martin's or Aplos or Bulldog Burgers, Blues, and Barbecue.
Right.
But so let's ask our listeners. Mac Hike Auto Group text line 601-885-3776. Is there a spot that has? I'm talking about really good chicken. I don't want
run of the mill.
No,
I don't need that.
I don't want it.
Nah.
I'd rather go home, fix a boar's head sandwich.
Yeah.
With triple pickles. Yeah. Like that. And a little really thinly sliced Mississippi State jalapeno cheese. I did this the other day. And a little bit of mustard, and I put like 47 pickles on the sandwich, and I put it on broil in the oven. I like I want a sandwich toasted.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It's like that Boar's Head Deli on Highway 12 in Starkville. If you're ever running around, just call it in. Make sure to tell them you want it toasted.
Right.
Get the 76 Deli. It'll change your life. It's a club. It's with the turkey ham and turkey ham and roast beef, maybe a boar's head. Then they put whatever cheese you want on there.
Love a club. I don't know who started the club, but it's nice. It's a good thing.
When done well, it's big time. No doubt about it. We should ask our listeners. We're going to go hardcore sports next for 24 minutes with Mike Detillier, but we should ask our listeners like best sandwich, in the state, the place that they go. And it can't be burger. We'll do burgers plenty of times this year because there's like 47 National Burger Days. But like best sandwich, and where's the place that you go? Well, we may do that at 9 a.m. Or you can go ahead and fill up the text line now. But Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans, will join us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. We are the Out of Bounds Show. We're brought to you by the Armory, Lake Harbor, and Ridgeland. For all your firearms, optics, and suppressors, the Armory, Lake Harbor, in Ridgeland, in front of Kroger. Mike D. coming up next. A big hire coming up in New Orleans. Saints want to get, they want to get back on track. They like that 2006 to, I don't know, roughly 2020, 2021 run with Drew and Sean. And we'll see what Mickey Loomis and the team decide to do, what direction they decide to go. We want to welcome in Saints insider Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. It's brought to you by your next video wall. Is powered by Sound and Communication, soundcomav.com for your school, business, hotel lobby, hospital lobby. Your next video wall, soundcomav.com. Mike D on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Mike, I'll continue to ask you until they make the hire. But if you had to call it today, who do you think it'll be in New Orleans?
I've always felt Aaron Glenn was in the the lead position, but he does have options, and known that almost from the start that the Jets are a team that he's familiar with, played there a number of years. He knows the organization, which is somewhat good, somewhat bad, but he does have a tailor-made defense in New York. So I think he'll have his choice of exactly where he wants to go, and I think that choice will be made very quickly. If it's not Aaron Glenn, then I think it's Mike McCarthy. Again, similar to Glenn, he's got ties here. He was an assistant coach back in the early 2000s with Jim Haslett. The general manager back then was Randy Mueller, who is one of the senior consultants for the Saints today. And Randy's chief assistant at that time was a guy by the name of Mickey Loomis.
Oh.
Now the general manager, senior vice president of football operations on the team. So I've always felt it'd be a 1-2 race between Aaron Glenn. Once Mike McCarthy got, left Dallas, I thought he would be a prominent guy. So I think it'll be one of those two, and I think you'll find out very quickly with Aaron Glenn, who is meeting today with the Jets. And if Aaron goes there, then I think they pivot very quickly to Mike McCarthy.
Wow. Okay, which one would you rather have, Mike D?
I think because of some experience, having been there, done that, it's Mike McCarthy. You look at his record, it is very similar to Sean Payton in a lot of ways. Both of them got one Super Bowl ring, and they've had a measure of success. Sean had it certainly here in New Orleans. Mike had it big time in Green Bay. And then afterwards, had success in Dallas, especially in the regular season. Not so much in the postseason, but he had a lot of success in the regular season. But again, familiarity, offensive-minded coach, veteran guy who has dealt with a lot of different quarterbacks. And so he would, because of the experience part. But you remember now when Mickey decided to go with Dennis Allen, the runner-up for that job was Aaron Glenn. Oh. He was the number 2 guy. Had things not worked out between the Saints and Dennis Allen, it would have been Aaron Glenn. So I've always felt, just because of those connections, those 2 guys would be 1-2 on the list.
Okay. Mike Detillier, Saints insider, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. This is the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We'll see what Aaron Glenn does, and then it sounds like the Saints, if he takes the Jets job, then the Saints move to Mike McCarthy. Do you have a feel or a read on the Dallas Cowboys?
I would not be surprised as Brian Schottenheimer.
Already on staff?
Already on staff. Knows. Listen, a lot of this is sort of fluff. We understand with Jerry the infatuation with Dion and everything else, and it got headlines and it got a lot of people talking, and that's exactly what Jerry wanted. It's the drugstore cowboy deal. All hat, no talk, no cattle. That's typical Jerry. A lot of talk, no cattle. So I think he pivots to Brian Schottenheimer. He's a guy that he has talked about quite a bit, and about that he feels as though he'll be a head coach in the National Football League. He understands that this isn't a job a lot of people are standing up in line to get. They have virtually no control.
Right.
I mean, so my thing, what it is, it's either going to be Brian or Kellen Moore. Kellen also has had a little bit of experience in that system of understanding who's in charge. And until Jerry's not there anymore, that's going to stay. That's not changing anytime soon. And coaches in this league have talked about it quite a bit, that you go in there, you got limited amount of control. Personnel-wise, what's going to happen in the draft, free agency, who do you keep and who you're not? Because you know what? If I don't like what the coach tells me, I'm going to the boss.
Yeah.
There are very few places in the NFL like that. I'm going to be honest with you, Bo. Very few that can say that occurs. That, if the head coach or the GM says something, then I'm going to go to the owner of the team and he's going to straighten it out. But it's like that in Dallas.
All right. So we've got, and then where do you have Ben Johnson landing?
Well, Ben's going to be in Chicago.
That's done.
I always sort of felt that was a spot he wanted to go because a couple of reasons. One, the salary cap situation is really good. It got also, two, a really talented young quarterback on that roster. Man, they got some weapons at wide receiver and tight end. And I think they would be open to giving him a budget where he could get who he wants to run his defense, special teams, everything else. Already a lot of rumors that Ben has already been in contact with Dennis Allen.
I saw that yesterday.
And that he would be, and he's also reached out to Darren Rizzi, former Saints coach, who special teams coordinator. And Darren's one of the best in the business. Darren's going to have a lot of options. I wouldn't be surprised. Sean Payton makes a big play. Sean, this is a few years back, but this was in maybe his final year when he was with the Saints. He came on with us and really raved about Darren Rizzi. That he thought, because they had Mike Westphal, and, Mike was, I think, one of the premier special teams coaches of all time. But Mike was getting a little up in age. But he said, I think I have right now the best special teams coach in the NFL, in Darren Rizzi. And so I think Sean will make a hard play for him. And I think certainly Ben Johnson will too. So Darren Rizzi is going to be in a lot of demand as far as special teams coach, assistant, head coach. I think and how he handled things down the stretch, and not the most ideal situation. Rizzi's going to be in big, not as a head coach, but as an assistant coach, special teams guy. So, man, Ben Johnson seemingly has a bit of an open checkbook in Chicago to spend what he's got to spend to bring in the people that can help him. His expertise is on offense, and so he's going to hire an experienced defensive coach to come in here to run on the defensive side, the football, and on special teams.
Over $13 million per year for Ben Johnson as a brand new coach. I think Jerry Jones was paying Mike McCarthy around $5 million a year. Mike D.
Yeah, it was in that range. And remember last year, the Commanders were going to go to 10 route with Ben, and he turned it down. He told them, "Don't even make the trip here. I'm not interested." Now, if he'd have known how good Jaden Daniels would have been, I think he'd have hopped that plane himself and went to Washington.
No
and
question.
talked to Josh Harris about that. But again, I think he didn't feel comfortable in that position in Washington. You think about what has happened in 365 days. This is a total change. You didn't know anything about the owner, didn't know anything about the new general manager. You did have the second overall pick in the draft, and you sort of knew who you were going to get at that spot, that it was going to be Jaden. But I don't think anybody would have thought, as big a fan as I am of Jaden, I did not think he would play as well as he did this year. I mean, even I'm surprised because having watched him, I knew he would have success. But to have this much success this early, remarkable for Jaden. Because, again, I've said this before to you, even before the season started, he's the coolest cat out there. Everybody else, might be caught in the vortex of the tornado. He's not. I mean, I got it. Don't worry about it. I mean, he's got that inner calmness about him when everything is breaking around him. That is remarkable to watch. And now I think, the whole world gets to see just how calm and cool and poised he is. And nothing seems to really sort of fluster him. And he works his butt off. Okay, he makes it look easy, but I know how much work he puts in. And Coach Kelly told me this a couple different times on shows he's done with us. He's like, I go into the office at 5:30 in the morning, and he's been there already half an hour, 45 minutes. I got to run him out because he is watching film, studying tendencies. He's got that Jack Ferrucci basically got that virtual deal that he goes through to make his mind speed up of what he sees out on the field. And he really worked at that tremendously well in the off season. He would go on his own and work out if it was with Brian Thomas Jr., if it was Mason Taylor, Malik Neighbors, you name it. He was, he sort of took that on his own. Not a lot of guys, in their 20s puts that type of effort into it. He does because he knows how good he is and he knows how good he can get.
Wow. Mike Detillier, NFL Insider, WWL Radio on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. How difficult will it be for Dan Campbell? He's been great with the Detroit Lions, but losing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn as coordinators. Mike D.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one because players are 1A and always will be for success. It's always about talent. We saw that on display last night with Ohio State and Notre Dame.
Damn right.
Just the talent level difference is pretty gappy. But coaching and coaches is part B, 1B. And having good assistant coaches is a must in National Football League. And they're going to take a step back. That next coordinator is not going to be as good as Ben Johnson. Their next defensive coordinator is not going to be as good as Aaron Glenn. But, one thing with Dan, and he did learn this from Sean Payton, that, put your ego aside and hire the best coach you can get your hands on. That was Sean. And, just look at what he went through here. Man, when they brought in Greg Williams, and a lot of people dislike Greg because of the bounty situation and everything else, but the Saints don't have that Super Bowl title without Greg Williams running that defense.
Right.
Greg brought in a certain edge, and he'll coach that way to the day he drops. He didn't get that nickname General MacArthur for nothing. I mean, he ran that defense and, hit every time you talk to him was, man, Sean ain't got nothing to do with what I'm doing. I'll run my own defense. That was Greg. I mean, sort of an athletic arrogance about him. I'm going to show you how tough we are. We'll play to the border and beyond as far as hitting is concerned. Man, that was great. And then he goes out. He brings in Rob Ryan, who's a different personality. But, Rob ran the defense, brought in Dennis Allen. Dennis ran the defense. Sean wasn't getting involved with that. He let them run it. I think maybe early in the regime with Gary Gibbs, I think he kind of stuck his nose a little bit in it. But after that, I know he didn't do it with Greg and Williams and Ryan and Allen. No, I think he learned his lesson. But one of the things he'd always preach was about get your hands on the best assistant coaches. Because if you got talent, they can bring out the best in a player. And he said a lot of times, I think assistant coaches get hired because they're buddies and pals, not because they're the best coach. You know what? He's right.
Mm-hmm.
I think we saw a little bit of that toward the end with Coach O and LSU. He was hiring buddies and pals.
That's a great point.
Wasn't hiring the best people out there. He was hiring people that, he felt comfortable with. And sometimes I think in life you got to put yourself in a position where you're not super comfortable.
Right. Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds show. Let's go to LSU, number 1 portal class. There's pressure on Brian Kelly. Like you said, he's not going anywhere because of his insane contract. But there's a lot of pressure on Hugh Freeze and even more on Freeze. But pressure on Brian Kelly. Give them credit. They're number 1 in the transfer portal, and they knocked down the number 8 class in high school. Are you cautiously optimistic that they can put this thing together and at least make a run for the college football playoff in 2025?
Yeah, and a big part of that is the one guy you didn't bring up, the biggest recruit they got, Garrett Nussmeier.
Yeah.
Okay? You bring him back your starting quarterback. And I think a damn good one. I think Garrett's a really good starting quarterback.
I agree.
The big question mark will be what I thought was a strength coming into the season, and it really wasn't. It's offensive line play. Now you lose your starting tackles and your starting guards to the NFL. So there is some revampment along that offensive line. That is the area to watch offensively. Man, LSU got running backs, receivers, and tight ends. They got. But, you bring back the biggest cog, and that being Garrett Nussmeier. But you got to rebuild your offensive line. They were not a real physical offensive line last year. But, man, you got a lot of young talent there. How quickly it blends. Brad Davis has got a big job up front on that offensive line. But they did bring in 2 starters from the transfer portal, a starting center and a starting either right guard or right tackle in Josh Thompson from Northwestern. And he has started at both right guard, right tackle at Northwestern. So that's the big question mark. Defensively, I think they will be much better in the secondary. They got a lot of speed and athleticism at linebacker. They're starting to accumulate the numbers up front along the defensive line. And it's something Bo Davis has talked about. We needed numbers here. He came in, he didn't have numbers. He's got it now. And so I think you're starting to piece some of the spots together that maybe were major question marks a year ago at this time, and especially in the secondary defensive line. So how quickly you can rebuild the trenches is going to be the key for LSU. It won't be quarterback, receivers, secondary. I think the secondary has gotten better, certainly, with recruiting, high school-wise, and also in the portal. But LSU would need one more starting offensive lineman, and I think they'll grab that somewhere in the portal, if not this kind of run when it opens back up in the spring again.
Okay.
But I think, Bo, hey, I didn't say this a year ago because I didn't think they were good enough defensive line, secondary, and you had a quarterback that you thought had talent, but you weren't sure. I was much more bullish on Ole Miss and Georgia just because of the fact that what you had coming back seemingly was, pieced together that you could make a run at it to get into that top 12. I'm much more optimistic about LSU this year than a year ago, just because I think Brian has got it through his head. He can't build just through high school ranks. I never understood how he didn't understand that. But he said it a couple of times, and then last year he kind of doubled down when they were after a couple defensive tackles in the transfer portal, and he said, we're not going to get into the money business. What? Man, that changed real quick, didn't it?
It sure did.
You have to play by the rules that are set in place. Look what Ole Miss did. And I talk about with Lane because defensively, that front seven, that's about as good as I've seen at Ole Miss in the past 15 years.
Sure.
Of what they were able to bring in. Now, again, a lot of this is going to be a one-hit type thing, and then you got to rebuild. But the portal gives you that ability to do that. It's like NFL free agency. It gives you an ability to restructure your team every year. I thought what Lane did defensively was really good last year. That defensive front seven was damn good. That's not why he didn't get into the, to the top 12. But I just feel like for LSU, he had to change. And maybe I think sometimes when you're a head coach and you got some experience, you don't listen real well because you sort of cement it in your own thoughts and values. I get part of that, but you got to change. I thought Lane changed much quicker to the transfer portal concept than what we saw certainly with Brian Kelly at LSU. Lane was able to adapt very, very quickly to it. Now, for Hugh Freeze, he don't get himself a quarterback. He going to get himself fired.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Arnold's got to be the guy for him, Mike D, from Oklahoma. Or you're right. He's going to get let go. Mike D, have a great week. Thank you, man.
Thank you, brother. Be safe.
You too. I think it's snowing down there in New Orleans and on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and on the Panhandle. Somebody just sent us a picture. I didn't get to go all the way through it, but they're somewhere on the Florida Panhandle. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The show is brought to you by your next video wall for your lobby, school, hospital, university. It's powered by SoundcomAV.com. Sound and Communications. They're the best for your next video wall.